Hello, welcome to Skull RPG Podcast. My name's Dwight Skull.
My name's Jacob Skull.
And today we're going to teach you how to tell your story.
So our next one in our continuation of the 7-ish episodes is burn characters.
So a burn character is a character who is working for a group, and then because of their actions or inactions, that group disassociates from them. Now, that said, if you're playing in a world that primarily has, like what we talked about in our last episode on espionage and factions, if you have a corp and a local gang that are working together against another corp and another local gang that are working together, with the police being a third kind of party, and maybe there's an ancillary party that likes to screw with everybody, but they're small time, so they don't actually get a lot of attention, and you're, say, working for Corp A, and in the process of doing so, you basically botch the job so bad with Corp B that it implicates you, and Corp A then has to publicly say, we don't really know these guys, but we will go ahead and put them down for you. Now you have a burned character situation. This is any time you or your team is now no longer able to associate with the people you were able to associate with. Burn characters is not something you want to, well, there's two ways around it. You could start with the burned character concept, and so the first episode is them getting burned. To a certain degree, Cyberpunk 2077, the game does that with your corp character. They kind of burn you right at the beginning.
Background, you get burned.
Right away. Spoilers, I guess, but anyway, it's not that big of a deal, because then the games merge within like 7 minutes. So the whole point is, that's a burning, right, where you're no longer able to associate with that company anymore. And it also means you're free to hit that company. But because you've also been hitting the other company, they hate you too. So the problem with being a burn character is everybody hates you. So now you're kind of stuck working for a third party that's not as big, which is a great concept, actually. If you think about it this way, think about it back in the Cold War. Let's say you were an American spy. Russia figured out who you were. You somehow got back, but in somehow getting back, it looked really bad. And so America then, burned you as well. And now you're holed up somewhere in Venezuela, trying not to be extradited back to either America or Russia, and you're trying to hold up against those forces because they both want to kill you.
It's now trying to find what country doesn't have influence from America and Russia, and your options are really limited.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like two countries, and neither one of them you want to live in. So anyway, That's kind of the burn character scenario. Now, another thing you can do with a burn character is you could play up to, and this is another thing that happens a lot, you could play up to a certain point, and then you give your characters a choice that's this moral choice. I like this moral choice thing, where you give them this moral choice of they have to do something that at least one, and preferably, I would actually argue, to do it really well, as long as you don't have conflict in your players. If you have conflict in your players, pick a moral choice that everybody will hate. And then you just kind of know what you're doing, and you're burning the characters because they are going to hate the choice. But if you don't have to do that, because your characters, i.e. your players in real life, like one another, trust one another, get along with one another, will hang out after the games with one another, right? Not Joe hates Bill and Bill hates Joe type of scenario. Then what you could do is you could have if you know your characters well enough, your players well enough, you could have a scenario where maybe 2 of the 4 or 5 players you have at your table find it morally questionable and won't do it, but the other ones are maybe ambiguous on it. Like, they don't care either way. It doesn't really impact them. But because they have a trust in their friends, they're like, well, we might want to get burned over this because, Joe and Bill have real big problems with this going down. And, I mean, I don't care either way, but I like Joe and Bill, so I'm not going to leave them high and dry, know? The advantage of that is the party could go against each other and have this interesting conflict where, again, only do this in groups that trust one another, but otherwise do something horribly heinous, right? And you see this in video games a lot, way back, actually. I can't remember what it's called, maybe Squadron Commander or something. It was like with Bill Hamill as a voice actor and a stop motion guy back in the 90s, by the way. It's the game I'm thinking of, and it's not Squadron Commander. I just cannot think of the game. It's anyway, what's happened is there's halfway through the first episode of it, like the first video game, there's a situation you have to make a call on. And depending on how you make the call, you either get burned by your entire squadron fleet, which is in space. So it's like you just take your fighter and go home somehow, which you can't go home. So you got to go to like the enemy planet and hope to God they don't kill you. Or you just say, I don't care, I'm going to go like bomb that orphanage, which is your other choice. So it's a kind of cool thing when you do a moral consequence where you're like, if you don't follow orders, you will be burned. Mm-hmm. Or you can have it as, oh, you botched and now you're burned. And so I'd be very careful where you do the burning, because if you do it at the very beginning of the game, it's going to be hard. You're going to have a lower level of tech. You're going to have a lower, your player's going to be fighting a lot of uphill battles, which is fine, actually. It's not a big deal. It's just something you should know. Or you could do it where they're all, pretty much famous in their corporation and everyone loves them, and then you burn them. Or it could be an inadvertent burn. One other third option. You guys could have a situation where you make somebody look bad early on in the campaign. They start rising through the ranks just basically to screw you. And then when they get to a position of power, they themselves burn you and frame you for something that you didn't even do. Mm-hmm. So it's like the framing, you have we framed you for your wife's death type of situation.
Which then creates a thing for the players as a later on story to try to actually prove their innocence
and kill the guy who burned them,
or not necessarily kill him, but hey, he gets burned as well.
What are you talking about? We all play with murder hobos. Why would they not kill this? Okay, go ahead though. I'm sorry.
At the GM's discretion, you might not want him to die because of power vacuums and things like that.
Which we'll cover in a later episode.
He might get burned by the corporate once they find out because of that.
Right. But either way, right, you have this situation where you could pull like a Dirty Harry or a road warrior, and the whole purpose of this is revenge.
Yes.
Going back and forth. So anyway, that is... Did you have anything else to add? If not, then we'll just close this down.
I think so.
All right, well, you guys have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, thanks for listening.
And for more resources, please go to skullrpg.com.